NCN, the National Communications Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, more importantly, young people of Guyana, school children, and I want to recognize your contribution to today's event because really you are the custodian of the future. I ask you to give yourself a round of applause. The UN Resident Coordinator, your presence here is not just important and symbolic. It sends the signal of the global nature of the issue of climate change. Regardless of how big a country you are from, or how small a country you are from, how rich a country you are from, or how poor a country you are from. This is an issue that confronts us all. And unless every single global citizen is willing and ready to make the necessary changes, then unfortunately we will not and cannot have the results that will secure our one planet. And this is not to send chills down anyone's spine, or this is not to create unintended controversy. This is just dealing with the reality. But the fact is we cannot address climate issues unless we address the fundamental needs and wants of human beings. We cannot even speak about climate change if we have people who are hungry, people who don't have access to water, people who don't have access to wages and earnings, and they have no other alternative but to seek out every possible way to survive. And I want to take a brief moment, especially for the students here, to quickly analyze our global situation. According to UNICEF, 1 in 3 persons globally do not have access to safe drinking water. And why they don't have access? It is because we don't have the revenue, the resources in the developing world to give access to safe drinking water. 1 in every 3 persons. 3 billion people lack basic hand washing facilities. The same hand washing facility that was so essential in the fight against COVID. 3 billion people lack basic access to this fundamental public health imperative. 4.2 billion do not have safe sanitation. Another major public health issue. 2.2 billion people do not have water that comes from a safely managed facility. This is the reality of the world we live in today. 20% of the global population do not have access to adequate housing. 1 billion people of the global population live in slums. More than a half of the world live on less than $5 a day. More than half the world population live on less than $5 per day. 68% of the world population is projected to live in urban areas by 2050. 68% of the world population is projected to live in urban areas. Between 2014 to now, undernourishment increased continuously increasing to about 1 billion people today who live in hunger. 1 billion people who live in hunger. Why do I say this? And why is this so critically linked to the One World and One Planet initiative? We cannot have one world and one planet where more than half the people are without water, without food security. We cannot have one world and one planet if we have such great inequality that exists in our world. We cannot have one world and one planet when more than 68% of our population is projected to live in urban centers. The stress that will put on small land areas will be enormous and just not sustainable. But this is the reality of the world we live in today. That is why we have been consistently calling on the developed world to say the pledges they make. We are far away from the minimum $100 billion pledge that the developed world would have made to fight climate change on adaptation and mitigation measures. If you look at adaptation alone, just for adaptation measures in developing economies, it will cost between $140 to $300 billion annually, if we are to successfully meet adaptation costs alone by 2030. This is the reality. With rising sea level, with changes in climatic condition, this is the cost, this is the investment that is required. That is why developing countries like Guyana must take a balanced approach. We must explore every possible revenue generating activity so that we can have the resources necessary for adaptation and mitigation. But we must do so in a sustainable way. We cannot live in a false reality. We have to live in the reality of the global environment in which we must operate in. Whether you're an environmentalist, a scientist, an economist, a social activist, you cannot live in silos. We have to live within the construct of the global reality. And that is why we are pursuing a growth and a development path that is carved under the low carbon development strategy, where we are seeking to strike the balance, where we are seeking to ensure that sustainability is built on economic viability. Sustainability is built on environmental sustainability. Sustainability is built on reducing inequality, disparity, and bringing balanced growth and equitable growth to the people of one Guyana. What we want to do is to create a model. We cannot have a one world if in countries we have division. We create a model as to what a one Guyana means and what a one world should mean. A one world should mean that we must all be concerned about the health of each other. A one world is not a world in which the poor developing country must stand at the back of the line for vaccines in a pandemic. A one world is not a world in which one section of the global population must have priority access to vaccines in the time of a pandemic. That cannot be the construct of a one world. And I want us in Guyana to raise our voices in unison and say, this must not be the one world that we want to go after. And this is the reality. We have to stop skirting around issues globally. And we have to deal with things in a realistic way, in a fair way. We cannot have one world with the type of inequality that exists in the system. And it all comes back to climate change, adaptation, mitigation. Because if you look at some countries that have high deforestation rate, it is high deforestation rate because people are going after economic opportunity, livelihood opportunity. They were going after opportunity to keep food on the table for the children and their community. Why is it unsustainable. We cannot escape this reality. Here in Guyana, we have been able to keep close to 90% of our forests intact. But what is the world paying us for that? What is the world paying us for the more than 90% forest that is intact? These are important questions that global leadership must answer. This must not be a slogan, one planet, one world. This must be a call to action, a call to realization, and a full recommitment by the world that we need to adjust the inequalities that exist globally if we are to truly fight climate change. Today, symbolic to the effects of climate change, I will join in planting a Belgian mahogany tree. The symbolic nature of this tree is that it comes from one of our sister states in CARICOM that is severely affected by climate change just like us. But the resilience of the in strength and lifespan, and more importantly, somebody asks why not a Guyana tree? But more importantly, it is the understanding that we can only tackle this global issue in partnership, the symbol of partnership, unison, collective action, and collective voice in the issue of climate change. Forest covers 31% of our global land area, and it is more biodiverse than any other. It is more diverse than any other. This is a reality. A country with 90% forest cover, almost 90%, contributed to biodiversity to the world. 19.5 gigatons we store. But is this the headline in the newspapers? Is this the headline that we as Guyanese promote for the country? Or do we lose this reality? This reality of our contribution? We have already made it very clear that we cannot be blamed or we cannot be subjected to underdevelopment because of what took place by a few countries. We have a fundamental right to equitable development, but in exercising that fundamental right, we are saying to the world, we will do it in a different way, in a sustainable way, in a way in which we secure the environment, in a way in which we keep that forest cover, in a way in which we continue to contribute to the global fight against climate change. But what is the reality? What is the reality, my dear friends? Global inequality has tripled in size as we speak today. With all the development aid that you hear about, with all the richness that countries are growing by, global inequality has tripled as we speak today. And who are the most affected? It is the citizens, the global citizens in the developing economies that are most affected. Sea level rise by the 21st century is expected to be between 10 to 21.5 inches. That is the level of sea rise. We have 425 kilometers of coastline that we must protect in this country. Who is going to pay for it? Where is the money going to come from to protect this more than 425 kilometers of coastline that we have to protect, to save lives, to save crops, to ensure we have food secure, to save livelihood? It is us. It is Guyana. We will have to find that more than $1 billion in adaptation just to meet this one singular need. Where will the revenue come from? It will not come from the headlines of newspapers. The revenue cannot come from there. It has to come from real work in the economy, from the productive sector. That is where it must come from. Because so far, what we have seen in the world is an unwillingness to pay the true cost of the damage that was created. 35% of this coastline is what is considered hard dam or Orton Dam. 35%. We still have to address that. I ask all the specialists who speak. I ask all the specialists who speak every day to tell us, how do we address this if we don't address our revenue needs and don't pursue aggressively forms of revenue that must come? In mitigation, IMF projects that to keep the temperatures at 2 degrees Celsius, the UN or UN rep, to keep the temperatures not at 5, at 2 degrees Celsius, we need carbon price to be at $75. That is not President Ali saying this. That is the IMF figures. To keep the temperature at not 1.5, at 2 degrees Celsius, you need to have carbon price at $75 a ton. Carbon price today, as I speak to you, is between 3 to 6 US dollars a ton. Let's stop yapping globally. This is the reality of the world people are faced with. Let us stop standing in conference rooms and conference centers and address the real issues of survival if you're really to pursue the one plan and ensure that we do so in a sustainable manner. This does not negate the fact, however, that we here in Guyana need to change our style and our culture in the way we treat the environment. We must all understand that we need to take individual responsibility. If each one of us recommit ourselves to treating the environment in a more respectable way. If we recommit to pursue a path in which we will see littering sins and injury to humanity, then we'll be able to make an individual change. And when we make those individual changes, we'll be able to pursue collective action. And it is collective action that will create a national movement that can move the international community. But in advancing this, we all have to take ownership of the problem. It is not a government problem. It is not a private sector problem. It is a humanity problem. We must all take ownership of the problem. And when we take ownership of the problem, we must jointly take ownership of finding the solutions. And that is what I've been trying to do all across the country in the almost 2 years. To try to bring us together as one big kind of family on the table, so that we can start thinking collectively, so that we can start finding solutions together, so that we can use this natural strengths that we have to advance the ideals of what the one Guyana must be and should be. As I said before, we are realizing our development through a balanced approach. In that balanced approach, we have to ensure that we have energy security. The world today is faced with an energy crisis. We have to ensure we have energy security. We have to ensure we have food security. We have to ensure we have climate security. But importantly in all of this, we have to ensure we have economic viability. We have to survive as a nation. Viability must not be the food security, energy security, and climate security. So So our policy mix must be realistic. We have to pursue policy formulation that reflects this balance. Policy formulation that ensure we build a country that is resilient to all of these threats, whether it's climate, water, or the sustainable pathway must be built in a resilient way to confront these threats. Important to this, Mr. President mentioned the increase in the capital budget that is so necessary for monitoring. So important to this is the capital cost. You preach all day to the developing world, go solar, go wind, go green hydrogen. What is the capital cost? Who owns the technology? Suddenly the man who developed oil and gas and built this economy is now the owner of the technology for solar and wind. And the developing world is told now for students that yes, we must, because it is good for the planet, it is healthy for the planet. But let's be realistic. At the current capital cost, how many developing countries can afford this transition? And who is paying for the transition? These are questions that cannot be left unanswered. These are questions in the policy formulation, policy mix that we must pursue. And I'm saying we must pursue. I'm saying to my friend from the UN, I'm not saying that they must not, we must. But who is going to pay? We can't even raise the minimal $100 billion we committed to years ago. So I say to my friend, the UN Secretary General, we welcome your advocacy and your strength on issues of the environment, but you must balance that with these realities. You must balance that with these realities. And not only continuously hear leaders identifying the problems, point to the solutions and call out those who need to be part of the solution and are not picking up the slack or taking their responsibility. That is what leadership is about. We must be willing to call people out. This is the reality of the world we live in. The pandemic taught us a dangerous lesson. I can tell you, as one leader, I knew how difficult it was to get vaccines for the Guyanese. And I know we have to pay more than the developed world. That is the unevenness that we must fix when we talk about one planet. I'm sorry if the speech can be uncomfortable or uneasy, but I assure you, this was not planned. The UN President will tell you, I am going with what my heart and my emotions tell me is right. And I know when I leave this mic, I leave here with a very clear conscience this morning. Very, very clear conscience. In addressing this one world, tell us the plans of how we will fix food insecurity, how we will fix climate insecurity, how we will fix energy insecurity, and how we will fix the financial and economic meltdown that we are experiencing today. Don't tell us that the developing world must move to investing in renewables. That is not fixing, that is passing the buck to the developing world again, that you must find money to fix the problem once more. That is not the solution, that is not fixing the problem. Tell us how to fix it. Tell us how we're going to raise the money. Tell us how you're going to put more money into grants and concessional loans to fix this. I'm not speaking today only as President of Guyana. That is the love of my life, the people of Guyana. but I speak today with responsibility as a global leader, with responsibility of speaking frankly for the developing world. And those in our society who are blindsided or short-sighted to these realities must wake up. Must wake up to the reality. Nobody's going to come home to us here and find the resources to give you the best possible health care and best possible education. I know it's early in the morning, many of you may have had your coffee already. So I can't say wake up and smell the coffee. But wake up to the reality. So my dear friends, the young people, the future of the world, do not be discouraged. Do not be discouraged, but be encouraged that with strong commitment, with strong leadership, with an understanding of what it means to be a part of the family of humanity, not the family of one section of the world or the other section of the world, but with an understanding of what it means to be part of the family of humanity. We must contribute. We must make commitment. We must take action. We must work together to realize the one planet, one action, through one commitment. But the one world and one responsibility must not be divorced from the equality of treatment, the non-discriminatory nature of the global system, and the access to resources. I say to our world today, it is time we fix this, the family of humanity that advance together. I thank